All right, high rollers, he's back. Yes, the phenom, the South African guru, the Don of MMA and UFC sports betting, Chris De Beer, back to talk about UFC 205, McGregor versus Alvarez, Woodley v. Thompson, and we'll preview Anthony Johnson versus Daniel Cormier, plus more. Chris, welcome back, man. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me back on.
Hey, you called it. You called it. An early TKO or knockout for the notorious one, Conor McGregor, and he got Alvarez in the second round. It was a flurry, wasn't it?
It wasn't the fight I expected. I expected Alvarez to come out and try and wrestle more. I expected him to move away from the left hand. I don't know if Conor got in his head because he just went straight out there to try and box with Conor. And as soon as I saw that, I knew McGregor was going to win that fight. And he won it quite easily, a lot easier than I thought he would.
Well, it was a pretty convincing victory. And I know Alvarez was pretty upset with himself after the fight. He said the game plan was to move left. McGregor's lead leg would be there for the takedown. Of course, the fight starts, and he starts moving right into the left hand of Conor McGregor. And boy, did he get knocked down a few times in round one.
Yeah, in that first minute, he got clipped. Then he went down a few more times, I believe, in the first round. Conor probably could have finished it in the first round if he pushed a bit more. Came out in the second, and then Alvarez was done by that point. And you can really understand why he'd be so disappointed. This was his big moment, his big fight. And he's probably never going to fight on a stage that big again. And to go out there and to lose when you didn't stick to the game plan, you didn't do what you're supposed to do, I can imagine it's a tough pill to swallow for Eddie Alvarez.
Well, McGregor, man, that left hand is so sharp, it's so accurate, so fast. I know Alvarez says after he got knocked down the first time, he didn't know what hit him. I mean, he just didn't see it.
Yeah, McGregor's got a real weapon in that left hand of his. I've heard Joe Rogan refer to it a few times as the death touch, and it seems to be that way. When people get hit with that left hand, they go down. Even Nate Diaz, who has a crazy chin, he went down 3 or 4 times, didn't get knocked out, but that left hand has got some power in it.
Well, I'll tell you what, a convincing victory for Conor McGregor at UFC 205. Okay, a couple of things post-fight I want to talk about. First, the interview portion with Joe Rogan in the ring. And he was asking, where's my second belt? The second belt was not there. And man, it appeared McGregor was really not too happy about it.
You know, I don't know how the UFC nearly blew this massive marketing opportunity. You've got your first simultaneous two-weight world champion. Why wouldn't you want the picture of him on top of the cage with the 2 belts? I don't know how that can slip through without anyone thinking, maybe we need the 2 belts ready to go. It's just crazy that the UFC, who've been successful at promoting their guys in the past, would miss out on such a great promotion and such a great marketing opportunity. It just blows my mind.
Well, to me, it seemed like he went from flexing his muscle in the ring to flexing his business muscle out of it, because he really called out the UFC ownership. He says, I don't know who runs this show now. No one's come talking to me. But now that he's got 2 belts, he's really got some leverage.
McGregor's got all the leverage in the world at the moment. He's saying he's ready to sit out. He'll take his time. He's got 2 world titles. And now he's saying, he wants percentage of revenue or shares in the company. So it's going to be an interesting time going forward in mixed martial arts. Years ago, we've said, will this ever happen in UFC? We've seen it in boxing with co-promotion and things of that nature. Will McGregor be the first person who brings co-promotion or shares in the company to a fighter to the world of mixed martial arts? It's really unprecedented, and fighters should be applauding Conor McGregor. He's really changing the game for the better and making it a better workplace for the fighters.
I found it very interesting, too, that, with Eddie Alvarez just a couple of miles down the street from Madison Square Garden in New Jersey, it was all Ireland inside that arena, wasn't it?
It was crazy. As soon as McGregor's music hit, that arena erupted. Eddie Alvarez was pretty much getting booed. I feel sorry for the guy. He comes in there. It's basically his hometown. He's finally in New York. He gets to fight there. And he's getting booed to a guy who's flying over from Ireland. So that's the fight game, though. People love characters, and people love guys who can back up their trash talk. So credit to Conor McGregor.
Well, the second thing post-fight kind of ties in with the Joe Rogan interview. But at the post-fight press conference, Conor uncharacteristically cut it short. I mean, he was only in there for about 10 minutes. And he mentioned that he's having a kid, and that, when he was single, fighting for 10 or 15 million a fight was enough. But now that he's having a family, he wants to be financially secure. He started to show that leverage and says, they got to come and talk to me. He also mentioned the fact that some of these celebrities are now co-owners of the UFC. And when I got thinking about that, I thought, you know what? This guy's right. Look at what he does for the UFC. Why hasn't he got a piece of it?
It's actually crazy when you think about it. There were those leaked UFC documents last year that showed that Conor McGregor by himself accounted for about 25% of their pay-per-view revenue. That's just crazy when you think about it. They've got probably 500 fighters on the roster, and that one guy brought in 25% of the pay-per-view revenue. That's not even including the big fights he's had this year with Nate, and I'm sure this Alvarez one is going to be huge. So he's in such a powerful position at the moment. And the new owners are really in quite a bind. They've got a lot of debt on that company. They've got to pay off that $4.2 billion price tag. They can't afford to lose Conor McGregor right now. They need the revenue.
So what's your best guess? Does he fight again soon, or is it one fight in 2017, two fights? What do you think?
I think it's really going to depend on how that first meeting goes. I think Conor McGregor is at the place right now where he's willing to sit out. Maybe a few months ago it looked like he was, but now he's had the crowning moment. He's the two-weight world champion. He's even getting offers from WWE and Vince McMahon and Triple H, and all those guys are talking about him. The movie actors are talking about him. Conor McGregor's getting offers from everywhere. And I think he's perfectly happy to sit out until after his baby is born and just pile on that pressure, because the longer he's out, the more the UFC needs him. So I think the next big fight for Conor McGregor is really going to be with Dana White and the management of UFC.
All right, listen, I'm going to put you on the spot. I just caught tail of it on Sunday night, but I see that Brock Lesnar lost at Survivor Series in under 3 minutes to Goldberg. Do you follow the WWE, and do you think that was a smart move, them using Brock that way?
I try and keep up with it every now and again. I like to follow Brock, and that was an interesting turn of events. You know, they advertised that match heavily. Even out here in South Africa, we're seeing adverts for it. And for Goldberg to come back and smash Brock in whatever it was, 90 seconds or whatever, it certainly got people talking. Apparently Goldberg has signed onto his contract, so I'm sure they're going to do it again. And I think it was probably a good move at the end of the day. They've got people talking about it. There's intrigue if they do a rematch. And it's an interesting situation.
It's got to make Mark Hunt feel kind of bad. Hey, I lost to Brock, and this guy just pummeled him.
Yeah, I saw Mark Hunt on Ariel Hawani's show the other day saying he was getting in lawyers and he was looking at suing the UFC and maybe suing Brock. So that's a whole other issue that's looking like it could get quite complicated and quite nasty.
Okay, real quickly on UFC 205, we had the co-main event, Woodley versus Wonderboy, ends up in a majority draw, 47-47, 47-47, and 48-47 for Woodley. Man, I think that one judge got it wrong. I personally thought Stephen Thompson won 3 rounds to 2, although the 2 that Woodley won were pretty devastating.
That's true. I actually had it 47-47. I thought I gave Woodley that 4th round as a 10-8. I thought he was close to finishing it, so I thought he deserved a bit more in that round. But I wouldn't begrudge anyone who scored it for Woodley, anyone who scored it a draw, or anyone who scored it to Thompson. It was a close fight, and they've just got to go and do it again, I think.
Well, I think in rounds 2, 3, and 5, we saw what Thompson wanted to do the entire fight. Unfortunately, he had a slip or a slight knockdown in round 1, and Woodley got on top of him, and I think he became hesitant to really do what he wanted to do, was throw more kicks. But man, when he's on his game, Thompson just seems like he's going to stalk you down and hunt you.
Yeah, Wonderboy is a special talent. He's got that strange style. It's kind of hard to emulate. And if they do fight again, it's going to be very interesting. Now that they have fought each other once, it's going to be interesting. And it came out a draw. Normally, if one person wins or one person loses, you know what to change. Here, they're so evenly matched. It'll be interesting to see who changes what and how that second fight turns out.
Chris Weidman lost. It was an incredible flying knee from Yoel Romero. He beats Weidman and then eyes up Bisping. That's going to be an interesting fight, don't you think?
That's going to be very good. And Bisping didn't seem too happy about it at the time. He was giving him the finger, flipping him off. Lots of trash talk going back and forth. But I love Mike Bisping. He's such a character. He makes his fights interesting, and I'd be happy to see that fight take place.
Was there any surprise for you at UFC 205? For me, it had to be the Edgar Stevens fight. I really thought that Edgar was in some trouble, that Jeremy Stevens was going to tear him apart. But boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, Frankie Edgar was very impressive in that fight. I will say the one thing that did surprise me was Meisha Tate losing and then retiring. I didn't expect that or see that coming. And kind of a sad moment from a UFC fan point of view. Meisha Tate was kind of one of the trailblazers for women's MMA. So to see her go out like that wasn't the greatest, but credit to her and all that she's done in her career.
Okay, UFC 206 coming up December 10th on a Saturday night. There's a few fight nights from now until then, but that's the big one, UFC 206. The rematch, Anthony Johnson squares off against Daniel Cormier, who is the champ, of course. Johnson just looks like a beast, and something tells me he might win this fight.
Johnson has got to be the best first-round fighter in the UFC. That guy is just deadly in the first round. We saw in the first Cormier-Johnson fight, Cormier nearly went out in the first round. So this is another one of those fights where I think if Cormier can get out of the first 2 rounds, I think he's going to win it. Otherwise, I think Johnson's going to put him out early. It's going to be a close fight, and I'm not sure who to go with, but I'm hoping Anthony Johnson can get that victory and finally get that UFC world title.
Couple of other interesting matchups on that card. Cerrone takes on Matt Brown, and then we've got Holloway versus Pettis. So those are some big names and some important fights for those guys.
Yeah, Cerrone finally getting the opportunity. You're supposed to fight at 205, and then Kelvin Gastelum pulled out, and whole situation there with his weight issue. So now Cerrone fighting on this card, and Cerrone's always game. Matt Brown is always a good fighter. Both of those guys like to go out and put on a show, so that should be a very entertaining fight. And Max Holloway, this guy, he looks like he could be one of the contenders to McGregor's featherweight belt. So it's going to be an interesting fight as well.
The year wraps up with Ronda Rousey, of course, in there against the champ, Amanda Nunes. What do you think of 2016 for the UFC? I think it was a good year. And what do you expect in 2017?
Well, I think UFC have done a great job this year. In 2015, I think they kind of had quite a lot of cards that people weren't really that interested in. This year, they seem to try and make at least so there's 2 or 3 big cards on every pay-per-view at least, so that if one gets cancelled, or like at UFC 200 when John Jones and that whole situation went down, they're still able to make fights happen. And I think it's been a good year for them. Obviously, Conor McGregor has done really, really well for them this year. The Nate Diaz fights. UFC got back into New York for the first time, so that's awesome for them. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens in 2017. Will Ronda Rousey be around next year? Will John Jones be back? All these questions need to be answered, and it's going to be exciting.
Chris DeBeer, thanks so much. We'll get your predictions via social media, and perhaps we can talk again after the Johnson-Cormier fight, man. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much for having me.